The Galactic Conservation Station orbited the planet Krev 7, a world classified as extreme danger by every civilized species in the known galaxy. Inside the station's observation deck, 3 xenobiologists stood frozen in absolute terror as they watched the security feed. Dr. Thesic, a Valorian with crystalline skin that currently flickered between panic yellow and fear white, clutched his datapad so hard it cracked. "She's going to die," he whispered. "The human is going to die, and Command will shut down our entire program." On the screen, Dr. Sarah Chen walked through the containment habitat, wearing nothing but standard field boots, cargo pants, and a simple shirt. No armor, no weapons, no force field. The other scientists had practically begged her to reconsider, but she had simply smiled and said, "Trust me. I grew up with dogs. Dogs. Whatever those were." The translation software had provided no helpful context. The habitat housed 6 Krevathi cubs, each the size of a small hover car. The cubs were orphans, their pack destroyed by a territorial dispute with an even larger predator species. Adult Krevathi stood 3 meters tall, possessed rows of serrated teeth, and could tear through reinforced steel with their claws. They were apex predators on a world where everything was an apex predator. The cubs, at only 6 months old, were already capable of killing a fully grown Valorian or Xanthari with ease. Sarah walked calmly into the habitat's grassland area. The cubs noticed immediately. 6 pairs of eyes, each glowing with predatory intelligence, locked onto the human. The largest cub, which the team had designated as Alpha 1, stood from its resting position. It was already the size of an adult human, all muscle and hunting instinct, wrapped in midnight black fur and natural armor plating. Dr. Zenthos, a 4-armed Krell researcher, activated every emergency protocol simultaneously. "I'm calling security. I'm calling medical. I'm calling—" "Wait," Dr. Thesic said, though his voice trembled. "She requested we observe. She said this was important for the integration protocol." Alpha 1 approached Sarah with the distinctive stalking gait of a Krevathi predator, low to the ground, shoulders rolling, every movement calculated for maximum explosive power. The other cubs formed a loose semicircle behind their leader, cutting off escape routes with the practiced efficiency of pack hunters despite their young age. Sarah stood completely still. She didn't run. She didn't reach for a weapon or call for emergency extraction. She simply stood there, her weight balanced, her breathing steady and visible in the habitat's cool air. Alpha 1 stopped 3 meters away and released a challenge growl that made the habitat's reinforced windows vibrate. It was a sound designed by evolution to freeze prey in place, to trigger every survival instinct that screamed, "Hide." The other cubs joined in, creating a chorus of predatory intent that would have sent any rational species fleeing in terror. Sarah did not flee. Instead, she took one deliberate step forward. The growling stopped. The cubs looked confused. Prey didn't advance. Prey ran or froze or fought desperately. Prey never ever walked toward a Krevathi challenge. Alpha 1 snapped at Sarah's boots, jaws closing with enough force to shear through bone. It was a warning bite, a way to establish dominance without killing. The cub's teeth clicked against the tough material but didn't quite touch flesh. It was testing her, the scientists realized, seeing if she would break. Sarah looked down at the cub. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Sarah lifted her boot and gave the cub a gentle but firm stomp on its front paw. Not hard enough to injure, not soft enough to ignore, just enough pressure to say clearly and unmistakably, "No, that's not acceptable." Every scientist in the observation deck stopped breathing. Alpha 1 stared at its paw, then up at Sarah, then back at its paw. The cub's ears, which had been pinned back in aggression, slowly shifted position. Its tail, which had been rigid with hunting tension, began to move. First, a small twitch, then a hesitant wag, then a full, enthusiastic tail wag that sent its entire back end swaying. The cub dropped its front half into a play bow and made a completely different sound. Not a growl, not a threat, a chirp, an invitation. By the founders, Dr. Zenthos whispered. It's playing? Sarah reached down and scratched behind Alpha 1's ears, right where the armor plating met fur. The cub, this creature that could have torn her apart in seconds, leaned into the touch and made a rumbling sound that was almost a purr. The other cubs cautiously approached, their body language shifting from hunting pack to curious juveniles in moments. Within minutes, Sarah was sitting on the ground, surrounded by all 6 cubs. They climbed over her, chewed on her boots, and wrestled with each other while she laughed and gently corrected behaviors that got too rough with the same firm but kind discipline she'd used on Alpha 1. Dr. Thesick pulled up Sarah's personnel file with shaking hands. It says here she was an animal behaviorist on Earth before joining the Xenobiological Corps. What does that mean? Dr. Zenthos was already researching. I'm accessing Earth's data files. It appears their homeworld has... Oh my. Their homeworld has thousands of apex predator species, and humans domesticated some of them. Domesticated? That's impossible. You can't domesticate predators. The files say they domesticated something called wolves, pack hunters, apex predators. They turned them into dogs, animals that live in human homes, that bond with human families, that protect human children. Dr. Thesick watched as Sarah stood up, and all 6 cubs followed her like she was their pack leader. She walked toward the habitat exit, and they walked with her, their aggressive postures completely gone, replaced by the eager body language of youngsters following a trusted adult. How? Dr. Thesick asked. How did she do that? Dr. Zenthos pulled up more files, reading frantically. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. Humans evolved alongside predators. They didn't just avoid them or hide from them. They understood them. They studied pack behavior, dominance displays, social hierarchies, and apparently, those instincts translate across species. On the screen, Sarah was now teaching the cubs to sit on command. When they obeyed, she rewarded them with treats from her pocket and physical affection. When they didn't, she used the same calm, firm correction. The cubs responded like they'd been training for months instead of minutes. She wasn't afraid, Dr. Thesick said slowly, understanding dawning. That's what made the difference. She didn't see them as monsters. She saw them as young animals that needed guidance, and they sensed that. More than that, Dr. Zenthos added, reading deeper into Earth's files. She understood their language. When Alpha 1 challenged her, she responded in a way it understood, not with fear or aggression, but with a dominance display that said, I'm in charge, but I won't hurt you. That stomp was the equivalent of what an adult Kravathi would do to correct a cub. Over the following weeks, Sarah continued working with the cubs. She taught them basic commands, socialized them with other species, and prepared them for eventual reintroduction to a safe habitat on Krev 7. But more importantly, she taught them that not all beings were threats, and that trust could exist between predator and prey. The station's director, a cautious Hydrelian named Miersch, watched one of the training sessions from behind protective barriers. This changes everything, he said to Dr. Thesick. We've been trying to handle dangerous species with force fields and remote controls, but the humans, they have something we don't. What's that? They're not afraid to get their boots snapped at. Sarah emerged from the habitat, covered in dust, and what the cubs considered affectionate slobber. Alpha 1 followed her to the door, whining softly when she had to leave. She turned and gave the cub one final scratch behind the ears. Good boy, she said. I'll see you tomorrow. The cub wagged its tail so hard its entire body shook. Dr. Thesick approached Sarah as she cleaned up. "Dr. Chen, I need to ask. Weren't you terrified, even for a moment?" Sarah smiled, pulling off her boots to inspect the teeth marks Alpha 1 had left. "Of course I was terrified. But fear isn't the problem. How you handle the fear is what matters. And I knew something the cubs didn't." "What?" "That they were just babies. Dangerous babies, yes, but babies who needed someone to show them the rules, someone to be firm but kind, someone to stomp gently instead of running away." She looked back at the habitat where 6 apex predators were settling down for the night, calm and content. "That's not a human thing exactly. That's just understanding what it means to be part of a pack. And humans? We've been building packs for thousands of years." By the time the cubs were ready for reintroduction, they had become the station's greatest success story. Other species began sending their impossible cases to the human behaviorists, and every time the humans approached with the same calm confidence, the same understanding of predator psychology, the same willingness to get their boots snapped at if it meant earning trust. The galaxy learned a valuable lesson. Humans weren't special because they were fearless. They were special because they understood that fear was just the beginning of communication. And sometimes all it took was one gentle stomp to change everything.